Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, today I want to explore the topic of omni-channel platforms and communication platforms because I think it is really interesting and timely, especially as Facebook is merging Messenger with Instagram. Speaking of which, I'm curious, how do you all feel about having Facebook have access to all your digital communication, whether it be on WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one. But what also caught my eye recently was an article that was talking about how remote work is making cybersecurity a top worry for CEOs, and how remote working still poses a security risk for organisations, especially where digital communications is concerned. So today I've invited Gabriel Engel, CEO and founder at Rocket.Chat, to join me on the podcast to discuss the benefits of omnichannel and the future of centralised communication and much more. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way to Brazil, where Gabriel is waiting to speak with us about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I was looking forward for it. So my name is Gabriel Engel. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Rocket.Chat, which much before becoming a company was an open source project. Then we turned into a company. And Rocket.Chat is a communication platform, a digital workplace, if you like. And we have I think, a unique take on this communication industry that we think we build a tool that is not just to talk with your colleagues, like an internal communication, but also use the same tool to talk with customers, to suppliers, to partners, and as an open source tool, allow people to connect Rocket.Chat into so many different systems and customize to their needs, even white label, build other companies on top. And that's my passion, like to help people communicate better, especially now during those strange times of lockdown and companies going distributed. I think we have an even more important role to play.
Yeah, and it's such an exciting space to be in at the moment. And the omnichannel platform communication space seems to be really thriving, especially as Facebook is thinking of merging, or they are merging Messenger with Instagram. So can you expand on that news and the kind of trends that you're seeing in the space at the moment?
Yeah, so we keep seeing this trend of organizations understanding more they have to develop a conversation with their customers. And a conversation cannot be forced to happen on any specific media, right? You can, like, it's not the company who force their customers to use one way or the other to talk with them. And they want the conversation to persist. They want to be known. So organizations are investing more and more in being able to meet the customer wherever they are. And understand that the conversation continues from one media to another. So we're calling, like, I think this new term is called like the 360 communication. And we like to talk about like a conversation because I think it means more than just communicating with your customers. It's really developing a conversation. But what we have seen as the next frontier, not just about getting you talking to your customer wherever they are, but also allowing anyone inside the organization to talk to the customer wherever they are. So the trend that we're seeing right now is rather than restricting the tool to be used by your sales agents or support agents, right? What we see the more and more is like anyone in the organization should be able to talk to the customer, because maybe they have a question or an issue with a contract or a billing or a technical issue that might need to get involved a developer, right? What usually to happen is like you open the ticket, that agent will just copy that information across a different system and then talk to whoever inside the organization is. So there is this gap, right? This bridge that someone's having to perform between the customer and the problem solver internally. And then we're seeing right now like the next thing to really develop a conversation is what if you can invite your developer to talk directly to the customer in that sense, or the guy, the legal team, and so what we believe and what we build Rocket.Chat to do, and I think that people start to realize the power of breaking those silos, is having anyone in the organization able to talk among themselves, but also anyone from the organization can be pulled into the conversation with any customer or supplier or partner. And if you think about, that's not even a new idea. Like when you're talking about emails, like you can get anyone from the organization being added to a thread of email with the customer, right? There was no restriction about who can contact the customer by email, who can actually get involved on an email thread. But when we moved into the world of chat, or the systems were designed in a way that was like very restrictive, who can talk to who. And I think now, as more and more people are working distributed and remotely, that barrier is becoming a problem. And you see lots of companies trying to then remove this barrier and bring everybody on board on the communication platform again.
And I'm glad you mentioned email there, because I'm curious. It's been talked about for years now, the death of email. But do you think we'll ever see the death of email and the rise of chat platforms that will take priority over that? Is that something that you're seeing?
Yes. My short answer is yes. But I have a few caveats on that answer, right? I think a lot of people always talk about like how the TV did not replace radio, or the movie like it didn't replace the past technology. So I think email as a technology, it's never going to die. But I see more and more that we can incorporate the email into the next generation of communication tools, and email can happen as almost like a fallback, right? It's almost like I can if I have, depending on what tools you're using, we can try to talk using video, but if it doesn't work, we fall back into an audio-only conversation, right? So I think if you look an email as this fallback type of medium for conversation, then I think it can be replaced and needs to be, and that would also need a system that has keeps some of the good characteristics about email, because we have a lot of things that we hate about email, right? It's a digital communication tool, but it somehow became slow. Yeah. So you don't email your colleague to ask like if they want to go for lunch with you. You're gonna send a chat, like whatever you're using for chat, right? But you're not gonna email them, because you don't know if they're gonna read, like if they're gonna read in time. You're not gonna send an email like, let's go for lunch now, because you don't know if they're gonna read now. It became a slow medium. Became people don't trust if the other part received or not, if they read or not, if there's too much spam. So, and we appreciate all those problems with email, but everyone else that started to build tools to replace email, to evolve, they ditched a few of the good things about email. The fact that email is an open protocol is ubiquitous. Everybody has it. You see an email handler, and you immediately know what he's talking about, and you know that you can just type that email on your system and then send that person a message, right? All those things are nothing but incredible. But if you think about all the other people who created other tools, they are either proprietary, they are closed systems. They don't. You have to join that network. Someone will be controlling that data. So like all the cool things about the being distributed, decentralized, open about email, they were ignored. So it became like this one or the other. Like, do you want these cool things and that bad thing, or these cool things and that bad thing? And then we think, do we really have to make this decision? So I think the only tool that will be able to evolve from email, if they keep the decentralized, the federated, and the openness of email, but solve problems like signing the messages, the able to see who is like having a proper reading notification, being able to filter out spams properly, and having the whole speed that people are used in chat. So that's how I see that it will happen when we crack that problem and have a true open source decentralized chat system that works. I think then you can evolve email into that.
And I think after the events of the last 12 months, the decision making around any big new tech project is all going to evolve around, but what's the ROI? What's in it for us? So for the business leaders and the decision makers listening, could you talk a little bit about the value of open source communication? Because that's something that we don't talk about enough, I think.
Yes, I don't. I totally agree with you, and I think it's a very valid question. The question that we received and have to answer almost every day. There's something that are inherent to open source there that is worth mentioning. It balances the relationship between provider and consumer on any type of technology, because the customer knows that they have the freedom to take that code and run it somewhere else, right? They can inspect and see what is behind that code. So that's why we end up getting customers like the U.S. Navy or the Air Force or governments around the world, because they want to know who has access to that information, what is being used for. So there's a whole. If I want to list the what open source can truly give you, like the whole thing about data security, data sovereignty, right? Have the ability to know where the data is being stored, who is accessing them. You can choose to use a cloud. You can use a private cloud, your own prem, our SaaS. It gives this freedom to move and make the choices for yourself, rather than having to trust a provider about the integrity of the code, about the integrity of the data center, about the integrity of the encryption keys and all their policies. So rather than having to trust someone to do this, and sometimes it's going to be a company on a different country or a different jurisdiction, you can say, no, I want to make those decisions. I want to make sure the data is in my country, that is on the data center that I trust, that I have, I can keep the keys, that I can configure the way I want. So that's why we see more and more companies who put like high value on privacy, on content, and governments and other kinds of institutions wanting to have this full control about their communications, choosing open source applications to do so, because that's the only true way for you to know what you're getting.
And you did mention you get that question a lot. And I'm curious, from all the conversations you're having with all your clients, especially around big topics at the moment, such as hybrid working from home, and of course, security, are there any trends in those conversations that you're having with multiple clients from multiple industries?
So we are seeing one of the trends, it's a little bit in consolidation on I think we went through a phase where there's so many tools out there doing so many different things. And when they were not like mission critical, or they're just being used by small teams as a complement to their work routine, I think IT departments were okay with having this proliferation of different tools to do the same thing. But as working from home became more like the normal than the exception, the teams need to do conversation cross teams and sometimes cross big organizations. This standardization and consolidation into single tools became more and more relevant. And when they start to realize what kind of information is being shared by their teams, the whole topic about data sovereignty became more and more important. You saw like legal teams getting involved and starting to ask, okay, what data center is our conversations being stored? Like what country, what jurisdiction, who have access to it? Can we choose a different place to put our information? So we have customers all over the world that they choose, like they have legal reasons and to decide to host the data in their countries. You have customers in Asia, like in Singapore. You have customers in banks in Russia that they want to have their data about the conversation in Russia. They don't want to use an American data center for that, right? We have customers which are like they run the nuclear power plant in Japan. So they rather have all the conversation of the employees, like 30-something thousand employees, in data centers in Japan, under their own, actually inside their own infrastructure, right? Because it's very sensitive information. So you're seeing more about data sovereignty becoming more important. because this whole how important digital collaboration became on companies, and they realized there's so much information we share, and then they started to pay more attention about who has access to it. And obviously, then with security comes those conversations about being able to use two-factor authentication, maybe being able to use a certificate to do the encryption of the channel and force an extra layer of encryption. So we have invested a lot on securing the channels of communication and making sure that the customers that are using us can understand not just who is the endpoint or technology being used by almost like every node on the way if they want to.
And I think on the debate around privacy versus control, which continues to raise, there's enough content there for an entire podcast on its own. But what are you seeing and hearing around that topic too? Because it's quite a thorny issue, isn't it?
Yes, and it's quite amazing how it varies from place to place, not just from country to country, but like company to company. We've seen obviously regions where they have one stand on the conversation, where even if you are an employee, your conversation is private, should not be looked at and read. But we have going to other countries where companies might have a legal obligation to keep a copy of the conversation if there is a legal dispute or on a harassment or fraud or anything, and they need to provide a copy of the conversation. So it varies a lot. And then if you talk to people from different parts of the globe, they're going to have different opinions. What we try to provide in that sense is you need to have the flexibility. You need to give the control to the organization how they can apply the policies the best fit their environment, their legal obligations, and their values. It's the same story. I think we went through email, right? On the beginning, I think everybody used their personal email. Then we started to get your corporate email, and then people using their corporate email for the wrong reasons. And then it took some time for people to understand, look, corporate email is for corporate things. When I'm using my corporate email, I have to put my corporate hat, and then I should not be sharing personal stuff or of any kind. So I think on chat, people are going through the same journey and understanding if I want to send something to my colleague, it's not work related. And then if I care about like the privacy of it, I should use one of the many customer centric customer built tools like WhatsApp or Facebook, or which is it's your personal life, it's your personal chat. But for the organization, the same way as you care about your email, then you should care about your chat while you're talking to colleagues. You need to be mindful that it might become a corporate asset, like a data that corporate might be looking at. So I think that's the general rule, although I understand there's some different views on this topic.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. And if I were to ask you to gaze into your virtual crystal ball and look into the future and what could possibly be waiting on the horizon for us all, how do you see the future of work and the successes of a distributed workforce? How do you see things evolving there?
We're never going to go back to where we were, because the trend of going remote, it was already there. Like I've started working remotely when I first when I was in London, and that was back in 2008, working at Vodafone. And Vodafone, because they moved office to a big building in London from Newbury for part of the team, they said, well, we cannot force everybody to relocate, so we will allow everybody to work from home 2 to 3 days a week. And it was the first time that I've seen like a large corporation and actually like having a policy where you only had to come to the office twice a week, 3 times a week. And so they built the whole office. It had less chairs than the number of employees that worked there, because they knew they only needed to cover for a fraction, because you would never have everybody together at the London office at the same time. So they built offices that also, you didn't have a fixed place to sit. Everything was like dynamic. You'd come together every morning and find a place, find the people you want to work with, and then decide, find a table, and then you work with them. So the office became a lot more as this meeting place, right? An area for collaboration, for brainstorming, and much less of like it was not meant to be your routine. So that happened in 2008, right? 2009.
Yeah.
And I see the same thing now finally getting to other organizations, right? Where they're looking at the office and rethinking, do I really need people to be here every day? Or should I build a place where people want to come when they need to collaborate, when they need to? And I think that's what's going on. I've really liked a comparison that I've read with someone talking that working from home was the same as the new Coke, and and at first it looked like a very weird comparison, right? But stay with me. I'll sure it'll make a lot more sense. So if you look at the story about the new Coke, when there was an advertisement by Pepsi that they were doing like blind tests with Coke and Pepsi in the streets in US, and people would give a sip of each, and they would invariably prefer Pepsi. And it was like a big advertisement campaign, and the Coca-Cola guys got really totally scared and decided that they need to do something about it. So they changed the taste of Coke to be closer to Pepsi, right? And they thought, well, problem solved. Like, and then people hated it. It was like there was literally like people taking to the streets and complaining. The army and the soldiers complaining on the front. Like there was a whole backlash. It was considered one of the worst decisions ever by a company. Like there's like case studies about it. And then they started to try to understand what happened. Everybody said that they prefer Pepsi. We make our taste more like Pepsi, and then people complain. So they had to introduce as Coke Classic, and then eventually turn the new Coke into the new Coke and the Classic into the current, and then phase out the new taste. And when they tried to understand what happened, they said like Pepsi had a little bit of a sweeter taste than Coke. And then what they say is when you have your first sip, you might prefer it. But if you have a whole can, you will get a little like bit tired of it, right? And then you say, if you have a whole can, you would actually prefer Coke. That's what they concluded once they done the testing with more deeply. And then, so the guy was saying like working from home last year, at least in the beginning, was like having the first sip. Like you only see the benefits, right? You haven't tried for long enough to understand what are the downsides. Like you just see like, oh, I don't have to commute. I can talk to my colleagues whenever you are. I don't have to change. I can work in my pajamas. Or like there's a lot of benefits. But after a long time, you start to miss the banter in the office, the serendipity of some of those conversations can lead into ideas. You get like going lunch or being away from home for a bit, right? Going to your happy hour after work. And so you start to miss, and organizations start to miss into the building a culture, into this cross-functional conversations that sometimes can lead into problem solving. If you read the stories about Google, you can how many of their solutions like came about to during a conversation with people playing snooker, right? And then they were even I think the invention of GPS itself. It happened on Bell Labs when people were on the cafeteria discussing how they would track Sputnik, and then one guy overheard and then say, "Wow, we could use the Doppler effect on the sound on the waves to define where it is." And it would like during this conversation in the cafeteria, they end up like creating the GPS system. So it is something powerful, right? So you don't have that much on the digital world, and there is also when you get to a point where you're starting to hire people, and they never met their coworkers in person, nobody from the team in person. It's a lot harder to keep the sense of belonging, and I think there is something on humans, like we take in a lot more information during a conversation than just what is being said, right? We read the eyes, the expression, like there's so much more information that is being sent to us beyond just the content itself. And people, I think I saw some studies saying like why people are so much more tired where they have a whole day on Zoom meetings if they have a whole day during regular meetings. They say that their brain go in overdrive trying to compensate for the low resolution of the image, the low quality of the sound, the fact that you're seeing a lot of many small pictures, and you're trying to read and second guess the mood of the other person. That it's tiring. It's a lot more complicated, and then people get more anxious. They get more their daily routine becomes less organic, less fluid. So when people start to realize this, that there was the setbacks from going remote, they have to invest in building the remote workplaces, which are like Vodafone used to build. That's like bringing back some like these offices which are more meeting points. So you give people the opportunity to know each other, so they can work remotely well. So I think that one of the key factors to having a good remote culture and a working remote company is that if you know you're going to have to invest in giving people the opportunity to meet face to face every now and then. And that's something we do, and a lot of companies in Silicon Valley that were already working remotely for years. They make sure that their staff meet at least once a year. Ideally, there is a study that says once every 9 months, people should meet face to face to keep this connection. And then being able to meet not just for work, but like to go and have a meal together, like to develop some kind of a relationship. And we could see it firsthand, like the company before a summit, when a lot of people have never met in person before. And then we had this summit where we brought everybody around the world to spend 2 weeks here in Brazil with us. Then people travel back. You can see that the whole conversation, people need a lot less words. They make each other understand a lot faster. It's almost like you have oiled the machine to work. So we decided like we follow this rule and we try to meet at least once a year, have everybody to come together because it's a worthwhile investment.
Oh man, that's brilliant! I love that, and I completely agree with you on the serendipity side of things as well. I think we often underestimate the power of serendipity. If you go into the water machine or the water cooler or the coffee machine, it's just those random conversations with someone from a completely different department that just leads to something completely different, you know. But I'm curious, we've talked about a lot of problems today. So can you offer any use cases of how you're trying to solve some of those problems with what you're doing at Rocket.Chat?
Yes, most definitely. I think one of the biggest problems that we see, it's this that needs to be fought back, and the tools are starting to help to do it, is this hyper presence. Like that you feel that chat is a fast tool, and then people get addicted to like sending a message and expecting a fast reply, or even sometimes sending information in bits, and they don't realize how much they are interrupting the person on the other side. So there's a lot like that needs to be learned, because when you see that person, maybe you're passing to their chair, and then you see they're concentrated. You're gonna think, okay, maybe that's not the time to interrupt them, right? I'm gonna come back later, or but when everybody's on chat, you say, oh, I need to say something to that person. Sometimes the people just say hi, and then you already like interrupted that person right in the middle of stuff. And that person we say this to our team, like never say hi. We have a rule that never say hi as a message, because you're just interrupting and not adding any value to the conversation. You can say hi, and then you go on and you write the whole question. But some people have the tap to go, oh, hi, and then send enter. And then they start send another phrase, enter, and another phrase, and enter. And then you have to say, like, do you imagine the person on the other side receiving, you interrupt them, and then they're like having to wait for the next bit of information until they can do something about it. So the whole thing about learning how to communicate asynchronously and be mindful of causing interruptions is a big topic for it. So two things that we worked on to deliver creating Rocket.Chat. For instance, one is with something that we call the discussions, and how they're different than thread. And I personally love the analogy that we created. For instance, you can have threads, and we always try to look at the real world. What is the analogy? So threads for us is if I'm on a conversation, you said something, like let's say you're in a room, a lot of people you're having a conversation, and you said something and I want to make a comment about that. So I can reply on a thread. And in Rocket.Chat, that gives you receive the message, but on the channel and creates like a side conversation, like a little sidebar where the conversation can evolve. But every time I send a message, I still get like a smaller one-liner version of my message on the main channel with a smaller version of the avatar and a one-liner. So, and the whole concept is I'm still in the room. So let's imagine we are still in the room, we have a conversation. If I call someone just to comment what I say, I can start a side conversation, but everybody else in the room can still hear it, right? We haven't left the room, which I think it's useful because maybe that conversation can heat up, can become, I don't know, maybe interesting. More people can, maybe I overheard that the guy said something. So there is a little bit of serendipity, right? I can see that a little message said something I care about. Then I'll try to join the thread. And so we tried purposely make the side conversation not totally silent like a lot of people do to the main thread, but still cause a little bit of noise that is easy to ignore, but it almost gives you the sense there's people in this room talking about a different topic and it became relevant or not. And the discussion is where you can announce and say, guys, this is an important topic. I'm inviting these guys to go to another room to talk about this. So you're not going to hear about this topic again because we don't want to annoy you with that noise. But everybody here is invited to joining us on the other room if you want. So we try to create this distinction, trying to always mimic a little bit of the behavior on the physical world into the virtual world. And I think those are more the things that people have to do. They have to implement ways to cater for these different types of communication and different types of interactions that we have. And one last thing that I also it's still on designing phase, but I feel that is very important. It's about having smart mentions. Right now, most of the applications you can just mention someone, and that person will get notified that you mentioned them.
Yeah.
But if you think about like mentioning, is not like a binary thing. I might be telling someone, go talk to Gabriel on a conversation. And then do I need to interrupt Gabriel to say that someone told someone to talk to him? Or maybe I'm mentioning you, but it's not important. I don't want you to be interrupted by now. But most applications now, if you mention someone, it becomes like you get an alert and like red, like a ringing or something like, oh, someone mentioned you, and you go there and see. And maybe something that someone asked you that you have only to reply by Friday. So we're trying to make the mentions to have the person mentioning to be able to factor in more information to mention, and also put a priority or a date that you want that by, or if that. So it's almost like creating a syntax where you put like the name of the person, exclamation mark, and then you can put a syntax like high, low, medium, or a date or 2 hours. So I can tell the other person already in advance, like the level of interruption that I need that to take. And I think some people, when we discussed this initially, they would say, well, but if you give this power to people, everybody's going to always say urgent, right? But I don't believe that. I think more and more as people experience the problems of being interrupted, the problems that from working on your computer all the time, and they are going to sympathize with their colleagues' time and understand that they can build a culture where I can help you with your time, you can help me with my time, and we can all like try to be more mindful and be more explicit about sending the making conversation where it's not just little lines. I can send you a full question. I can define if I want to interrupt you, when they need that thing by, and then let the system sort my messages on the priority as specified by the people I need to reply to. So that's some of the things we're trying to build, and hopefully some of them will work out.
Oh, excellent. I think anyone that's been needlessly CC'd in 20 emails or tagged in things on other platforms will completely love that. And just going back from what you said at the very beginning of that and talking about what happens in the physical world, one of the things that used to wind me up if you were busy concentrating, where someone would send you an email and then arrive at your desk telling you that they've sent an email. Sometimes they'd arrive at your desk before the email's even arrived.
That's very true. That's very true. And that's the thing. Like the technology, sometimes it's good that when they are developed, they are simple, right? I think if mentioning was a complex thing to do, maybe it wouldn't have taken over the way it did. Now even Gmail has mentioned you can mention people on the body of the email, and they will like highlight and make a link to their email and stuff. So but it's very simple. Social networks pick it up, but now I think okay, we all get it. We all understand the concept of mentioning. How can it be more clever? How can I put more information and then mention if it's just for FYI? Mention is like, do I need to say that this person needs to give me the reply by then? So that's, I think, is the next frontier. The next step is how to go from mentioning to something that is more meaningful and have more data. And I think people are looking forward to be able to do that.
Absolutely love that. And one question I always like to ask my guests before I let them go is ask them if there's a particular song or piece of music that has inspired them in the past, helped them throughout their tech career, or just helps them get their head in the zone before going on stage or an important meeting or trying to land a big deal. What would your song be and why?
There is one that I've listened quite a few times when I want to get inspired. Or have like this feeling of awe, which is from Vangelis, and is from the soundtrack 1492, The Conquest of Paradise. And then the lyric doesn't say anything. I think it's in a made-up language, if I'm not mistaken. But I think Vangelis wrote like so many incredible songs. But this one, it gives me this sense of journey. It get a sense of like it has like a march, and so you have this feeling of something inevitable is about to happen, and it's something great, and it just gets to like you're in for the ride and make the most of it, and so I have this sense of awe that so many amazing things are happening that I cannot help but feeling inspired and energized every time I listen to that song. So it's one of my favorite songs for that.
Excellent. It's a great song to concentrate if you need to concentrate on something as well in the background. I know it well.
Yeah, there's no lyrics. They say stuff, but doesn't mean anything. And so it's not going to distract you. And it's cool. Sometimes I like getting myself imagining what would they be saying? Like because it's such a strong melody that you keep thinking like they must be saying something like from the gods, like the angels. So you can imagine the content of the lyric to fit wherever situation you are, because there are no meaning to the lyrics.
Oh, well, I've loved chatting with you today. But before I do let you go, for anyone listening that would like to find out more information about the work you're doing at Rocket.Chat, or even contact your team if they want to continue the conversation that we start today, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, that would be like totally my pleasure. So our website, it's very easy. It's just Rocket.Chat. It's a funny story. We tried to buy Rocket.Chat.com in the early days, but it was already taken. And then GoDaddy suggested to us like, oh, Rocket.Chat.com is not available, but you can buy Rocket.Chat. And that's how we end up having the name of the company. We were like trying different spatial related names. So GoDaddy helped us to figure out the name for the company, which is interesting. But so Rocket.Chat for the website. My email is gabriel.engel@rocket.chat. Or best way of all, you can go to open.rocket.chat, which is our open server where we talk to the community, and the whole team is there, is how we work every day. And you're able to talk to anyone from the team, from the community, there's about 400,000 people on that server, registered on that server. So it's a big community to talk to.
Excellent. Well, I'll add all those links to the show notes just so people can find you all nice and easily. Love chatting with you today. So many big talking points, and so many of those stories that we shared will resonate with people in and out of offices all over the world. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down and share it with me today. So thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you so much. It was my pleasure. And I'd love to call me anytime. There are a lot of topics that I love talking about. And it was really, really a pleasant conversation.
Wow, we have covered everything today, from the death of email, the rise of chat platforms, the future of work and the success of a distributed workforce, working from home, security, the value of open source communication, to privacy and control, and the exchange between security and privacy. I am conscious we've covered a lot of ground in just 35 minutes, but please, I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything that we talked about today. And as you should know by now, my email address is techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. I cordially invite you all to join me again tomorrow. We'll do it all again. But just a big thank you for listening from me, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.